Hello, beautiful people. My name is Emma.
And I'm MC.
And we are your hosts of the G-Forces podcast. So, this upcoming weekend is the British Grand Prix at Silverstone Circuit. It is our favorite race of the season, at least mine. I don't know about you, Mary Catherine.
I think it's up there. I think it's like children. I can't choose a favorite. Like,
That's a good way to
there's
put
like
it.
a handful that I like for different reasons.
Okay.
And I think it's up there. Like, it's one that it's way too expensive, but it's one that I would love to go and see one day. But
100%. If anyone wants to invite us to go, we'll be there.
Yeah. I'll hop on a plane.
I definitely would hop on a plane for this.
I do need to update my passport now that I'm thinking about it.
Anyways, well, we are going to do our normal get ready episode. What are you going to be talking about, Mary Catherine?
So because we're in England, I thought I would throw it back and talk about the first British Formula One world champion, Mike Hawthorn.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So I told Emma, she was like, who are you doing? And I was like, Mike Hawthorn. She's like, never heard of him. And I was like, don't worry. I got you covered.
I've never heard of him. I don't think we've ever heard of him, really.
Yeah, he's short career, pretty quick up in the rises. We'll get into it, but yeah, unfortunately, this is one that ends in tragedy.
Oh.
So, just quick warning. Because I feel like I should warn people before I get into it, and then all of a sudden it's like, and this is how.
It's always good to put like a content warning.
Yeah, just give a little disclaimer.
Yeah.
So.
Good idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about the 1987 British Grand Prix, which features some well-known people that we have talked about in many of our historical races, which I wonder now that I think about it, some of these people are still alive. I don't know how they feel about me calling them historical races, but they happened before our time of watching. So therefore, it happened before this modern era of cars. They're older races, like 2002 last week for Austria. I wouldn't call that historical, but like it's a past race.
Yeah.
But not with it. None of the drivers that are currently on the grid were on the grid then.
Okay.
Obviously, 1987, unless Fernando Alonso has been around for that long.
I mean, they love to like just remind us constantly.
No, I know. So yeah, I'll be talking about that. It's considered the most dramatic British Grand Prix in history. It's dramatic, but not like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then we'll talk about some motorsport news at the very end when we wrap up our final thoughts. All right, let's get into it.
Alright, so born John Michael Hawthorn in Mexborough, England on April 10th, 1929, Mike Hawthorn began to love the sport of motor racing early on in his life. His father was a pretty big enthusiast into racing. I believe he was like an amateur motorcycle racer. Okay. And his father bought a garage, which I'm pretty sure, having read a few of these guys, I'm pretty sure a garage, and I could be completely wrong, is what the Brits call a garage dealer, like a car dealership.
Interesting, okay.
Or they, like, all turned into dealerships because the way, like, they're described when I'm doing the research, it's like, and then they took up the business and they sold Jaguars and things like this, and so, yeah, in my instance, I'm thinking garage, I'm thinking, like, mechanic.
Yeah.
It could be a mixture of the both.
Okay.
His father bought a garage in Surrey, and this really instilled a passion for the sport, being constantly around cars. He ended up doing well in school and went on to study at Chelsea Technical College, gaining an apprenticeship at, I think it was like a big truck company. Apparently, this is something that I thought was interesting. There's a whole excerpt on his life in the Formula One Hall of Fame. And then there's obviously, like, Le Mans has a whole article on him because, we'll get to it, he has a bit of history with Le Mans. But they all kind of talked that he was a man who liked to fine wine, like, and women, like, and so Apparently, he was known as the ringleader of a local group of boys that would drive around the countryside. And this is what it said on F1 Hall of Fame. Searching for girls and pints of beer in pubs.
Lovely.
So, do with that what you will.
How old was he at this point?
I think it was, like, he was born in 1929. It was probably, like, later teens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not, like, at, like, 7. Like, he's not.
No,
like,
I thought you were meaning, like, at, like, 40. And I'm
No. This is, like,
okay,
when
if
he's,
it was, like,
a kid.
18.
Yeah.
I was basically we were all doing the equivalent when we were 18.
As he got older, his father continued to encourage, like, his motorsport passion, and around 1950, he began winning local races in a Riley sports car that his dad bought for him. It was a vintage car. Riley sports cars, think Downton Abbey cars.
Okay.
At least what I could look up. It didn't give me a specific year, so they are two-seaters. In 1952, there was an Easter meeting, which I'm assuming is just the name of the, race weekend at Goodwood Circuit, which, Goodwood...
Festival of Speed.
Festival of Speed happens, like, a handful of days after Silverstone in England, so it's still prevalent to this day. This 1952 Easter meeting was his first race in a single-seater car. He raced a Formula 2 Cooper Bristol that I think he either was given to by a friend, because again, like, this time of year, or this point of time, we've talked about a few drivers where, like, they were, like...
you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where they were just, like, gifted cars by, how they had their rich friends.
Yeah.
That he borrowed from a family friend. So there were 3 races he participated in that weekend. He placed first in the F2 race, and he did that from pole position. He placed first in what is known as Formula Libre race. I looked it up. I didn't read really in depth, but it's just like another version of, like, motorsport. And then he placed second in the main event. That was for Formula 1 cars.
In a Formula 2 car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
He slowly became known as the Farnham Flyer, and this would continue to follow him throughout his career, and was known for his extremely tall height for a driver, being 6'2". I think, is there any of the guys on the...
I think Esteban might be 6'1".
Apparently he's pretty cramped in the seats, and when he first began driving, he would wear regular clothes when he was just doing his, like, 2-seater races, including a tie he would become, like, synonymous with, like, flapping out in the wind.
That's so ridiculous.
And for Goodwood, he did wear, like, racing overalls, but he did include the bow tie, which became, like, a trademark for him.
Okay.
With his outstanding showing at Goodwood, Mike and his dad decided to enter the car in the remaining races during the 1952 Formula 1 season. As some might remember, 1952 was a great year for Alberto Ascari. We did a past episode on him, so definitely give that a listen. The handful of races that Mike entered into saw him doing super well, even gaining a podium finish, placing 3rd during the British Grand Prix. Obviously, with his quick success in single-seaters, this gained the attention of, again, some people's Lord and Savior, Enzo Ferrari, who hired him for the 1953 season. His first season in F1 saw what is considered, like, the highlight of his racing career. The 1953 French Grand Prix was a photo finish ending for him and the Maserati driver Juan Manuel Fangio, who is a 5-time world champion. Super big racer in the 50s.
Have we spoken about him?
We have not.
Okay.
Hawthorn came out on top, and apparently when they played God Save the Queen, Mike burst into tears, and, like, Fangio embraced him and was like, good kid, that's a good kid. He ended up placing 4th in that first year in the championship, and 1954, and his second year, was quite a tough year. On home soil, he was facing a lot of scrutiny in the media. Apparently, there were rumors that he was evading compulsory military service, and it ended up getting proven that there was a medical reason, and he was actually rejected from the military service. And there was, like, different stories of what the medical reason was, so, like, I don't know.
This is in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
what's going on in the 50s?
I don't know enough
they
about
needed-
English history, so.
That is very true. I'm just trying, I'm using American history. I'm like, World
Yeah.
War II is far over. Anyways, continue. There's too much stuff to talk about.
A whole different country. He was also seen as a party boy, and there just seemed to be a huge amount of media coverage on him. At this point in F1, there were what was considered non-championship F1 races on the schedule, which is how a lot of them ended up being able to participate in the Indy 500. And so during the 1954 Gran Premio di Siracusa, which was a non-championship race that season, Hawthorne's arms and legs were really badly burned in a crash.
Yikes.
Additionally,
No.
his father, unfortunately, was killed in a road accident.
Oh my god.
He was able to win the season finale, which was the Spanish Grand Prix, and placed third in the Drivers' Championship that year, but wanting to be closer to family and I read somewhere that he kind of had this, he wanted to, have, an English, backing team. And having inherited his father's garage, he decided to leave Ferrari. For the 1955 F1 season, Mike went to Van Wall, and it was a pretty uneventful year. But this is what brings me to his connection to Le Mans. Like many F1 drivers, Hawthorn decided to partake in Le Mans. And Le Mans is a 24-hour endurance race. It happened 2 or 3 weekends ago, and it has been happening since the 1920s. The race is honestly a bittersweet moment for Hawthorn. The 1955 Le Mans crash is known as one of, if not the deadliest crash in motorsport history. We've talked about it before. This crash killed 83 spectators along with the driver, Pierre Levey. During the race, just for some background, because we've talked about a few drivers who were in the race and how it impacted them because of, their connection. During the race, Mike Hawthorn had a moment where he suddenly braked upon seeing an order to pit and refuel. Because Mike braked, the car he had just overtaken, Lane Macklin's Healy, Lane Macklin swerved out of the way into Pierre Levey's car, which skipped over the embankment and went into a spectator enclosure. Ultimately, this ended up bringing up a huge amount of safety proceedings. I mean, this did change things. I think an additional 100 or 110 people were injured because of it.
This actually is not the race. We've never spoken about this race before. We've spoken about another race where there was 80-something spectators who died, and Jim Clark was in that race.
I'll have to, see. It might...
In the 50s, the races were deadly. Unfortunately.
8 hours after the crash, Mercedes decided to pull out of respect for the victims, but Jaguar, which was the team that Hawthorn was racing with, decided to not, resulting in quite a lot of media around their celebratory win. A lot of people kind of thought it was distasteful. It's a tough point of contention.
I know now when there's accidents over weekends, they don't celebrate, when Antoine Hubert passed away at Spa 2019, and that was the race that was Charles's first win. It was 2019. They didn't celebrate at all. He just they didn't have the champagne ceremony.
Yeah.
You got your trophies, and that was it.
Well, and it's tough, too, because this horrific event happened, but then all of these, really, important moments happened for Le Mans, and Hawthorn said it. I think he had a 3-hour duel with Fangio. He ended up setting, some records, and then he celebrates, and then there's all this trauma as well, and it's, how do you,
Yeah.
After the race, the incident was investigated, and it was determined that Hawthorn did not cause the crash, and it was just an extremely unfortunate race incident. Like many of the drivers we've spoken about involved in huge crashes or even around this one, it seemed to carry with Mike how deadly this sport was.
Yeah.
Remember, he just had a bad crash where he got burned. He just lost his dad to a motorsport incident. And then, he's involved in one of the deadliest crashes. In 1956, Hawthorn went to BRM, which is known as British Racing Motors, but only had one podium that season, and it wasn't even in a BRM car. I think it was in, like, a borrowed, like, Jaguar or something. In 1957, Hawthorn would join the Ferrari team once again, and his teammate during this time was Peter Collins, and all reporting said they were fast friends. Like, they had very similar interests. Like, they were great. 1958 was not only Mike Hawthorn's championship year, but also his last year in F1. Hawthorn was able to win the championship that year despite only having one win under his belt that season and beat Sterling Moss for the championship by just 1 point. Unfortunately, this season was marked with further tragedy for Hawthorn when his teammate Peter Collins passed in a fatal crash during the 1958 German Grand Prix. This championship win marked Hawthorn as the first British F1 champion, but despite this amazing feat, he announced almost immediately following that season that he would be retiring from the sport. 3 months after his retirement at age 29, on January 22nd, 1959, Mike Hawthorn skidded off of a wet corner on a road near his home and was unfortunately killed in the accident.
Oh my God.
I think it's just another example of, like, the absolute tragedy that so many of these drivers are, like...
They're surrounded by death.
Apparently he was known as just, like, a really jovial, like, huge, blonde, tall dude. But, you know, when you're surrounded by, like, all of this, it has to get to you.
Oh, 100%.
He was also engaged, so I wonder if, like, you know, maybe it was, like, I can't risk my life. Who knows? Maybe I'm romanticizing it, but, yeah, I definitely thought it was interesting. I did look up if there's any kind of, like, memorials or anything, but outside of the Goodwood circuit, there is a statue of him along with another driver named Lofty, who I didn't look into, but it's, like, a full-size statue of him.
There's a statue.
And
it's interesting that we've never heard of him before, with him being the first... He's the first English winner.
British F1 champion.
Okay. I'm just thinking, what is this is me being a dumb American.
Move past
yes.
it.
Okay. Anyways, I'm just being the dumb American that's like, what technically makes up Great Britain and what is
Emma? Everything said he was the first British girl.
Okay.
Like, we're good.
Okay.
You kill me.
All right. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, that's it on Mike Hawthorn.
Okay, I am going to get into the 1987 British Grand Prix. Like I said at the beginning, this was considered one of the most dramatic British Grand Prix. There is drama, but I don't know if this is just them dramatizing the drama. It's definitely something Netflix would have enjoyed, to be honest. Okay, so the reason why this was such a big deal is because this race, and really the main characters in this race, were Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet. Nigel Mansell is British and Nelson Piquet is Brazilian. They were both teammates at Williams during this year. They notoriously did not get along. Nelson Piquet one time called Mansell's wife ugly in a magazine interview, and Mansell's response was, that was really uncalled for. That was kind of out of line. Understandable. I would have the same reaction. The majority of the weekend, Nelson Piquet was quicker than Nigel Mansell. Piquet had ended up getting pole position in qualifying. And again, at this time, there was like 25, 30 cars on the grid, because why not? And so, yeah. Well, I will say, there were only, out of the 25 cars that started the race, only 9 finished. They didn't tell me why all of the information online just focused on Piquet and Mansell. Nobody said anything about anybody else.
I wonder.
So I don't know what happened about anybody else.
I wonder if we can see if we can watch.
I did get to watch some videos about it when I was taking notes, and some of the videos were actually really cool to watch, like seeing the celebrations.
They have it on F1
I think that they
archives.
might.
Yeah.
Okay. So the race starts. Mansell was only a few seconds behind Piquet up until about lap 12. He was able to kind of keep the gap, but at lap 12, a wheel weight flew off of Mansell's car. Don't know what a wheel weight is. I'm guessing it's a weight for their wheels. Shocker. But we don't have those today from what I know, so yeah.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
Let us know if they're used today.
Yeah.
Please.
So Mansell was able to maintain the gap, like I said, but the tires started to wear down a bit more because of the wheel weight, and the vibrations began to affect his vision. I don't know if any of y'all remember watching Checo's driver cam for the Monaco Grand Prix this year for like the one strip of the course that he did. I just watching that, I'm like, how do you see?
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine how bad this was, because I'm sure the stability of cars at that point were even worse. So by the time we get to lap 35, Mansell had to pit for new tires because of this. So the tire provider at this point was Goodyear, and Goodyear had said, these tires can last the whole race. And I don't think that you had a pit stop regulation at that point. I don't think you had to pit. I don't think you had to have different compounds. So when Mansell pits, he has a 9.5 second pit stop, which was speedy for the time.
Yeah.
Which is insane. Because also remember, they're refueling at this point. So
pit stops were very different.
The pit stops at this time, I think, were more similar to what IndyCar pit stops are now.
Okay.
So, the Williams were so fast during this season that when Mansell rejoined the race, he was still in second place. After a 9.5 second pit stop, he was just that far ahead. And the third place car at that point was Ayrton Senna, and he finished an entire lap behind the top two cars.
Jeez.
Yeah. So, Mansell, when he got out, was 28 seconds behind Piquet with 29 laps to go. Nowadays, we'd see that and we'd be like, not happening.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen. Mansell said, no, this is happening. This is my home race. I am gonna do well. And so Mansell started to lap faster and faster than he had the entire race, but Piquet was starting to respond. I will say Mansell during this race, from what I remember, it was saying that he had broke the lap record for the track 8 times during this race because he just kept going faster and faster. And so, remember, Piquet did not go and pit because the tires were going to last the whole race, and the only reason why Mansell pitted was because of the wheel weight issue. So, Piquet still had a 23-second lead with 22 laps to go. 12 laps to go, it was only an 11.6-second gap. So, he is basically going by 1 second faster each lap, catching up to Piquet.
Jeez.
Piquet had never pitted, so he was on old tires, like I said, with 10 laps remaining. Mansell had the gap down to 7 seconds. So in 12 laps, it was 11.6 second gap. In 10 laps remaining, it was a 7 second gap. So 4 seconds in 2 laps.
Yeah.
Insane. So Mansell had a slightly less rear wing on his car than Piquet, which is going to help with downforce. Especially on this track in particular. From what I remember, it's a high downforce track because it's such high speed turns that you need that higher downforce to just stick to the ground, essentially. That could be wrong, though, so don't quote me on that one. With 8 laps to go, Mansell did the fastest lap of the race. The gap at that point was down to 3.9 seconds now. So in the last 29 laps, he was able to get down to 3.9 seconds. With 3 laps to go, Mansell was only 0.8 seconds behind Piquet. Mansell's fuel was actually showing negative, so on their in their cars they were able to see their fuel. They were able to see how their engines were doing. He was at a negative, and he had a lap or two to go, and he said it was basically like, when your car is like, it says E, like when your gas is on an E, but like, you got a few more miles to go. That's kind of where he was at.
Right.
And he said, if I ran out of fuel, then so be it. But he was a madman during this race. So both of them turned into Stowe, which is one of the turns on this track. This is one of the tracks where every single turn, every straight, everything is named. So Stowe is one of the turns, I believe. Yes, they turned into Stowe, so yeah. And they actually almost touched wheels. It literally would have been like Max and Lando this past weekend, some of the turns, but like they avoided touching tires where Max and Lando didn't, obviously, given all the drama. So Mansell crossed the finish line first, which is great. This was his home race. It was a very exciting race. And about 2/3 of the way, like around the slowdown lap to go back to the pit, his car stopped because his engine just gave out.
Jeez.
And so this was when Williams was being provided with Honda engines, and this was actually what caused Honda to stop providing engines to them because they were like, you screwed our engine. Which is kind of strange.
Yeah.
But they then provided their engines to like Lotus or something else, and ironically, Mansell then the next season signed to that team that they were providing engines to. And since his car had stopped, this was the wild. I was able to watch this on, I think it was like YouTube. His car was stopped on the track, and the crowd like ran across the track. Like, as cars are, like, finishing, like, the crowd engulfed his car.
Jesus.
And they were so ecstatic that he had won. So the race result was Nigel Mansell obviously won in a Williams, Nelson Piquet in second, obviously in a Williams, and he was 1.9 seconds behind Mansell. And then the third place was Ayrton Senna, and he was an entire lap behind them, and this is when Ayrton Senna was driving for Lotus. So this was the earlier on seasons for him.
Yeah.
And like I said, only 9 out of the 24 cars actually finished the race. The reason why this was considered one of the most dramatic British Grand Prix is because Mansell, being British, is, as we know, is such a big deal to be able to win your home race and to get the gap down from 28 seconds with 29 laps to go to being ahead by almost 2 seconds at the end. They were saying online that, like, a feat like that has never been done, really.
Yeah.
And the likelihood of it happening again is not really gonna happen.
Yeah.
I do think it's one of those cool races that if you have a chance to find it, I think F1 TV probably would have it on their
archives.
On their archives. I think definitely take a watch and watch like the last 30 laps just to see the chaos. And just to see someone like watching the time go down that quickly. Like, I know that we've been so excited this season when like Lando's been trying to catch up to Max and like getting those seconds down, but this is like
speed.
Yeah. 100%. Apparently, there was a way to do something with your engine where you're able to apply like plus 100 horsepower or something, which is strange. But he did that to his engine with like no fuel left and was just like, we're going.
Yeah.
So he just like ran the car till it died, essentially. Yeah. But yeah, that was the 1987 British Grand Prix. Next, we're going to talk about some F1 news, motorsport news that's kind of going on. Yeah. First, we're going to start off with some F1 news because we're mostly an F1 podcast. Naturally. Okay, so some of the names that you're going to see this weekend that we don't normally see in cars, but we have seen before. So FP1 sessions, which is interesting that they're happening at Silverstone because this did not happen last year. We're going to see Jack Doohan driving in Pierre Gasly's car for FP1.
Hopefully he'll get more than 3 laps.
I truly think that this is just them saying, I know he's a reserve driver for them, but I really feel like this is them being like, we're going to give you some laps on this track so you have experience for next year.
Yeah.
Another person who we've seen before do an FP1 is back. Ollie Behrman will drive an FP1 for Haas. I don't know whose car he's going to be in because it didn't say, but we'll be seeing Ollie again. And then another one who will be driving an FP1 is an F2 racer named Cola Pinto. I think that's his last name. I couldn't find his first name. He will be driving in Logan's car for FP1 for Williams, which is going to be interesting. I don't know much about this driver.
I wonder if that is a sign that the wind has kind of fallen out of the sails with Carlos Sainz.
I think Williams has said that they're starting to look elsewhere because he hasn't committed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Carlos is losing the opportunity for a seat very quickly, and he needs to make a choice now, or else he's not going to have a seat.
Honestly, I'm waking up every morning expecting to get the freaking
Each time I get an
notification.
F1 alert on my phone, I'm like, is this it?
Yeah, I don't know what the plan is. I don't know what's going on. Not my monkey, not my problem.
And then one other piece of info that came out today is that the former Mercedes Power Unit Chief, Andy Cowell, joins Aston Martin as CEO. And then also, I didn't get their actual names, but a bunch of Alpine people have moved to Williams or vice versa.
I know Williams last weekend had made 20-something new hires.
Yeah. And it's all people from other teams.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is really the motorsport, the F1 news that's going on right now. Now, the last thing to talk about is all of the Arrow McLaren drama going on in IndyCar. So, we don't follow IndyCar as much as we should. But I do follow them a lot on social media and have paid attention to what's going on there. This season for Arrow McLaren has been an interesting one. So they have 3 seats in IndyCar. One of the seats started off being David Malukas, which was a big decision. Everyone was super excited about it. And then he got injured. And so then Theo Pourchaire, who won F2 last year, had been filling in and then ended up getting the seat, I think, or he was dropped or whatever. And then now they have, I think, Christian Lundgaard or something. Somebody else in the seat. And so people are not happy about the fact that from the outside looking in, it looks like there's not the loyalty to the drivers, but also it is a business. So I don't know necessarily what people expect sometimes, but I can also understand the frustration because it's like Red Bull dropping Nick DeVries in the middle of the season.
Well, and they just announced that they're not continuing.
So yeah, Alexander Rossi's contract is up at the end of this season, and they announced that they are mutually going different directions, and they will not be signing again.
I'm curious, and this is coming from someone who does not watch IndyCar and doesn't know knows absolutely nothing. I wonder if it's a little bit too much of the Pato Award show too. If Arrow McLaren is so focused on Pato that the other drivers are falling to the side.
Maybe, because I know Alexander Rossi has been doing well, I'm pretty sure, this past season, but
I just don't know enough about any of it to comment.
I've been following a little bit here and there of IndyCar, and
it just seems like a lot of movement.
Yeah, that's the thing. It just seems like a lot more movement than anybody else, really. I know their season is up. Their season ends in September. And I'm pretty sure that they're on a little bit of a break right now. I think they have a slight summer break in June, July-ish. But yeah, there's a lot of drama going on there, and online, people don't seem happy about it.
Yeah.
I have no opinion on it because, again, we don't know enough. But it does seem to be not the greatest online. So hopefully they can figure that out. I've always enjoyed watching them. I feel like their social media team is really great. So that's the side of them that I see most often. So who knows what's really going on.
No, we do. We had to get better at watching IndyCar.
But also, as I said before, and we've said this many times, remember, guys, all of this, it's a business. They're trying to make money, and in corporate America, you can get fired from your job anytime.
Yeah.
There's no loyalty
movement happens.
There's no loyalty to you
Well,
as a person.
I also kind of think about, like, college athletics. Like,
Yeah.
you're just a number.
You can get benched anytime.
You can get, like, think about all of the professional... Like, I was thinking about that. Think about all the players that get traded all the time.
Yeah.
So, like, everyone's job is on the line constantly.
Yeah.
But that's all I have this week. I'm getting excited. We have off. Happy 4th for the Americans listening.
Did you know, this is actually a fun fact. Did you know that this year on the 4th of July, it is the 100-year anniversary of the first time that a Caesar salad was made?
Yeah, New York Times has really been pushing the, like, Caesar salad lore on me.
I think that it's hysterical that
Like,
they're like, let's celebrate the Caesar salad instead of the country.
Well,
I think it's funny.
I do agree in that priority.
Yeah, it'll be a nice long weekend for all of us, and this way we can actually watch everything. It'll be the first race we get to watch stuff together in a couple of weeks.
4 races?
The last race that we watched was Monaco, I think, together.
I don't remember. I think the first one I watched alone was
Barcelona.
Spain.
Yeah. So it was only two races?
It felt longer.
Because it was,
I think watching with Mom and Dad was painful. Well, technically, like, 3 because
Or
we
Canada?
we didn't watch the last one together.
I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
It really doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I make sure to... We didn't say this at the last episode because we were having so many technical difficulties. It was like everything that could go wrong.
I was going to do
went
the
wrong.
subscribe, follow, content, social media, do all the things, ring the bell, follow us.
Well, she got it for me. Bye, guys.
Bye.